Welcome to our session on hopefully you don't make the same mistakes that we did. We're gonna kind of take you back through some stuff that we wished we had known when we started learning SolidWorks. Really what this comes down to, at least for me anyways, Garrett, you can offer your opinion as well, but I feel like there was a lot of things that I probably should have spent a little more time investigating in the beginning, because there was time that I just wasted on stuff that, it's simple things that really add up quickly. And that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and I think there's things that if you don't know ahead of time, you can kind of dig yourself into a hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them are pretty basic, but I think we'll definitely cover some things that people aren't aware of too as we go through this. So
Yep. Some of it might be a refresher, but I'm always good for that. There's things I forget about, right? Whenever we sit down for these things, you and I are just tossing stuff back and forth like, oh yeah, I forgot that feature was there.
yeah, and there's always stuff afterwards that I wish that I had said, right? It's like, oh man, I can't believe we didn't talk about like whatever, but that would definitely change this from like a 1 hour thing to like all day.
Yep.
So
That's life. That's life.
yeah.
All right. Little bit about us for those of you guys that don't know us. My name is Brandon Adkins. I'm one of the senior application engineers here with Hawk Ridge. I really enjoy anything that gets me outdoors. I live here in Spokane, Washington, Pacific Northwest. So, camping, hiking, kayaking, all that kind of stuff. We're very fortunate to live in this area and have those kinds of things. Like I said, I've been in the SolidWorks reseller channel for about 11 years now. Some of you guys knew me from Quest Integration when I worked there over the last 10 years. But if you've ever been through a training class or an event or anything like that with Quest or Hawk Ridge, you've seen me around and probably chatted with me a little bit. I do see some familiar names there in the chat, so good to see you guys.
Nice.
These days, I spend a lot of my time with the data management tools, as well as the core CAD applications, as well as simulation and technical communication.
Awesome. Yeah, my name's Garrett KLEIN. I'm one of the technical account managers at Hawk Ridge Systems, working with the strategic accounts. A lot of the same things that Brandon said. I live in the Northwest and love the area that we live in. But I do get to travel around and see all sorts of different places all over the country. So it's great to get around and see you guys. And, my specialties are, data management, CAD, Composer, all sorts of just random things. So like I said, same sort of stuff as Brandon, just a little less hair. So
all right, so we've got some good stuff on the agenda here for today. We're going to get into a few things that, at least the first one on the list I know was pretty confusing for me when I started learning SolidWorks drawings, all the way up through, how we can save time just making things faster, right? Do I have the ability to automate some things, and what can I take advantage of?
Mm-hmm.
Those are going to be a lot of the quick topics we take a look at here.
Yeah. And like I said, I think as we go into kind of the first one here, sheet formats, this is one that if you don't know like the differences about what belongs where, you can really kind of dig yourself into a hole. Wouldn't you agree, Brandon?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
One of the reasons why that is basically your drawing itself is made out of like a couple of different things. Like the template file is essentially just like a drawing that somebody has saved as a template that you can reuse, but that template file is made out of multiple things, right? So the primary thing that people focus on is this sheet format, right? So a lot of people aren't even actually aware that it exists. They'll make multiple drawing templates where maybe that's not necessarily the best scenario. I think the big thing that clicked for me here when I was learning about drawings and sheet formats a long time ago was because there's kind of different things, and when you understand what's different about them, it explains why SolidWorks is set up the way it is by default, right? So what I mean by that, there's actually a little note in the help file that we could jump into. But if I was going to go and create a new drawing here, let's just go ahead and make a new drawing. By default, when you open up SolidWorks, the first thing it prompts you for is a sheet format, because the drawing template that's created doesn't have a sheet format that's a part of it. What that allows you to do is pick and choose which size you want, right? So if you want to go write and skip over the kind of ugly A size and go into like some B and C size stuff. You can pick those. And the nice thing about that is because you're using the same template file, all the things as far as like your custom properties, your units, things like font size and things like that, those are all consistent between templates, right? So you can save a ton of time. And then if you're going to change out your sheet format, right? Say you came in and it always gets me when I have to hit that drop down now. It's been quite a few years now, but if you're going to swap these out, right, you can go in, you can update your sheet format, and then you could go in and update all your drawings, right? I used to see, I think, often people coming in and making the same changes to their drawing template, or their drawings every time, right? Say like there was a logo that changed or something like that. All you should have to do is change out your sheet format, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, get that stuff set up as your standardized format. That's the biggest thing that I really did not understand when I started, doing some SolidWorks drawings. What is the difference between that template and the sheet format? Really, a good way to think about it, and I think originally I learned this from you, Garrett, is think of that sheet format as like a layer that lives on your drawing sheet, right? You're going to have that piece of paper that contains whatever it is you want to put on it, and that sheet format is just kind of a layer that lives there and contains certain things. The cool thing about what you showed there, and I think is really powerful, but I didn't understand in the beginning, you have that flexibility with that default template to pick and choose what you want. So like when I was getting used to it, they just said, hey, we print everything on a C-size sheet. So I thought it was like a required step. But a lot of you guys out there in the audience, you probably have a full company standard template that contains the sheet format with the logo and custom properties and everything. So
yeah,
good stuff. Hopefully, if there was any confusion about that, it makes a little more sense to those of you that need some insight.
Yeah, and this is actually something that I refer back to pretty frequently. Like, if you just do a quick search online about differences between sheet formats and stuff, I think a lot of people have posted this image, and it helps to, I think, clarify things a lot of times for people. So
absolutely.
All right. So I think the next thing that we want to look at, and for those of you that PDM is offensive to, you can completely ignore the center section here.
PDM's not a bad word, I swear.
It's not, but you don't have to, we don't have to be talking about PDM for this to make sense and be valuable, I think, for everybody. But file properties, and specifically like how we deal with like a description or configuration specific items, right? That was huge, I think, for me. I think specifically, something that having done a lot of PDM implementations and migrations and understanding how people's data is going to be used in the future potentially really stressed this for me. Specifically, like breaking up things into kind of like logical bits, right? So let's say someday you want to integrate with an ERP system or some other external system. What you really don't want is a file name that also includes things like the revision and the description and all these other little pieces, because if you're going to bring it over into that other system, you're going to have to parse that information, or you have to break it up into its individual pieces and then send it over to that system. Where if we just use the custom properties dialog, right, we can start out the right way here, and we can put things in the right location so that in the future we can grab those pieces separately.
Exactly. And for me, not really having a background in manufacturing coming into this, when I was learning SolidWorks in college, they were having us do a little bit with custom properties. You'd go enter some description or whatever just to learn how to put it on a drawing sheet and pre-populate information. But that was the big thing that I didn't understand, is where else does that data get used? And then I come into this industry and start talking about, data management and ERP integration. I think you said it really well. That's going to be important stuff for just about anybody to figure out, where does that data get used? So, start off on the right foot, split up what you can. Don't have a file name that's, 100 characters long, because you're going to have some trouble figuring out where you put that stuff later on.
Right. And that can actually cause problems later on too, right? Like I often, when I'm talking to people about implementing data management systems, or just file locations and stuff in general, you want to keep that reference path as short as possible, right? There's
Absolutely.
things like the document manager that can only handle character lengths of so long, 256 characters, whatever it is, right? And if you go longer than that, your file references just go missing all of a sudden. So
Exactly.
yep, that's another good reason to keep those file names short. I think another thing that is huge, so coming back into SOLIDWORKS here, there's a couple of things. So one of the ones that was, I think, really embarrassing for me, and I didn't put this in the presentation, but I have to talk about it, is there's this thing that pops up. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with. When I was designing stuff, I essentially, when this would pop up, I would turn off SOLIDWORKS. This is a filter, right? I won't get into the details about it, but if you just hit F6, that filter will turn off. If you hit F5, you can see what filters are on. So
what's that goofy little funnel? I always get that question in training.
Yeah. You know, and there's kind of these little things that, you know, we picked up over the years that honestly, if I were to tell you like the true story about how I used it, it's kind of embarrassing for me. You know, things like all of a sudden I realized that, you know, when I needed to measure something, I could come here and find that measurement as opposed to going and grabbing my measure tool from the evaluate tab and, you know, following the slow process. But, you know, coming back, I think to, you know, how that really relates to what we're talking about here with properties and stuff. If you were to create like a new copy of this, or you're just creating a new part or an assembly and you're drawing that, if I had just a generic name following kind of best practices here, you know, the next thing that you want to do is put in that description. And often I think people will go and they'll hit save, and or, you know, a lot of people actually just put it in the file properties, not just looking down like a couple of lines here where you can actually see that the description is right here. Right. It's one of those things that when I saw, I was like, oh man,
Yep.
I can't believe I missed that, you know. So
Easily gets overlooked, that's for sure. Plus, there's plenty of other stuff that you're going to develop along the way. You know, I'm a big fan of using those data cards for sure, just because it makes for such a simple layout.
Mhm.
You can really customize the information that you want to use.
Yeah, and if you're not using data cards, you could always, if you're not using PDM, you could always use like the property tab builder, or, you know, you could create your own macro that shows you a form, that sort of thing.
Yep. Yep.
There's lots of ways to do this, but use the properties. Don't put the description or revision, that stuff inside of your file name. You'll be a lot better off.
Good advice.
All right.
Weldments.
Yeah, so this was, I think, probably one of the biggest things that was a huge game changer for me. I followed some pretty bad practices, not being taught really how to use SOLIDWORKS at all, being all kind of self-taught. One of the ones that I did was if I needed a piece of standard structural tubing or something like that, I would copy a part, right? I would have like my standard shapes and I would copy that.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those were derived from toolbox parts. And
got it.
There's problems when you do that, right? It's specifically with sharing with other people. Right,
I can think of one. Did it ever pull the wrong size from your toolbox?
Yeah, you know, like I think the typical thing people think of is like hex head bolt nuts and stuff like that, right? All of a sudden, your little tiny like quarter inch hex nut turns to like a 1 inch hex nut inside of your assembly. You're like, oh, what happened?
Yep.
Right?
We've all run into that at least once, right?
Yeah. And that's not to say that Toolbox isn't a valuable tool. It really is. It's just something that has to be implemented properly with a lot of foresight about how that's supposed to work. But with weldments, you know, there's just so many benefits to using weldments. So this was something I redrew. I guess it's been probably a while now since I did this. I guess we could even check, couldn't we, Brandon? We just went to the feature property. So back in 2014, 3 years at the reseller, I decided to redraw this. Was it me or was it? It was me. Cool.
I remember it was you because you did the original design. So we figured we should have you remake it, right?
Some of the parts are just really embarrassing now when I go back and look at it. Even this one's probably a little bit embarrassing if we were to dig into it, but that's beside the point, right? So there's a lot of advantages with using weldments, right? One, file paths. there's one file, so all of the references are kind of self-contained. I think the second thing that I really like about it is that it automatically creates kind of this cut list for you, right? If you, mine isn't set to automatic for some reason, but if I come in and look at this, it automatically grabs for you all the different properties of that specific shape, right? So like the C channel that I have here, it knows the overall length of that shape that I have inside of this system, the total, you know, and this even works for like sheet metal bodies and stuff too. So if you have a combination of stuff, that's not how I have this specific part set up, but if you want all these bodies and stuff filled out, you could use sheet metal bodies, or actually you could just insert the bounding box, right, Brandon?
Yep, I remember that one.
I always forget about that. That's going to automatically fill out for you like the description of the plate and all sorts of fun stuff there.
I think they started doing that around like 2014, maybe 15.
Yeah.
Take something else and get a bounding box.
I think for me, probably the biggest limitation, and I thought, well, there's no way that I can do this. I can't do this at our company because I need to have a separate file for each thing because I need to detail them all separately.
Yep.
Right. And I think that's what people often run into, and until somebody actually shows them that, hey, you know what, that's not necessarily the case. Right.
Yep. There's a lot of ways you can take that information and get what you need for manufacturing, right? The huge thing to take away from this is it's going to give you the flexibility to make design changes quickly, right? Weldments are super simple. You know, you brought it up in the beginning. I took the same approach. Copy files, assemble them together. You got to figure out all your cope cuts and stuff on your own, right? And then manage that in assembly. This is by far the faster way to do it.
Yep. And so using the select bodies there is how I was able to pull out that individual body, you know, and detail that one. And all the properties for that are part of that same file. So it's pretty crazy. Like I haven't run into a lot of limitations with weldments. I'm not saying that there aren't, but there's really not a lot of limitations that can't easily be overcome. So
absolutely. Let's see what we got next.
All right, copy settings wizard. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this back over to you, Brandon. So I'm going to stop sharing here and we'll see your stuff here.
Cool. Now, some of you guys have probably taken a look at Copy Settings Wizard before. For those of you that are not real familiar with it, this was a big one for me when I actually learned about how this thing works. Early on when I started using SOLIDWORKS, I was back and forth between working for a reseller, working on computers at school, had my laptop with SOLIDWORKS on it. I used it in all these different places, and I didn't understand that, you know, I thought I was working in separate environments, but I can make them all the same, right? I can take my settings from one computer to another. Once I learned about how to use this tool, I just kept all my settings on a flash drive, and you know, I'd take it back to my SOLIDWORKS class at school, and everybody's like, "How'd you do that? What do you got on your thumb drive there? Can I have your settings?" So it turned out to be a pretty good tip for the rest of the folks around there. But I use this pretty much on a yearly basis now when I want to capture my settings, make sure that I've got a backup at least, right? You can use that to your advantage with the Copy Settings Wizard.
Yeah. So I remember writing a tool. Remember when we did like the model crate stuff, like our own Model Mania, Brandon? Yeah. Right. I wrote an application to do that, and the people who always won the Model Mania things, they always had that flash drive of their settings that they came with. So they didn't get thrown for a loop by whatever settings were on the system when they logged in.
Exactly. So, I mean, you can customize just about anything. I pretty much run with, you know, mostly stock settings on a lot of this stuff, but make it comfortable for yourself, right? You guys want to get a job done quickly, and interface customization is going to be a good way to do that. So if you want to take advantage of Copy Settings Wizard, just head to your Tools menu. Might have to scroll down the list a little bit here. Head into that Save and Restore Settings. Right? Capture what you need. This is just going to create a registry file that you can load up, and it'll write all those settings to the registry. I'll skip to the next page here just to show you a couple of things too. I have seen some companies that, you know, have a small to medium-sized user base. Maybe they want to administer some system options. There's other ways to do that now, but one of the ways I saw in the past was just capture system options. Everybody's got the same, you know, template directories and stuff like that. But you can pick and choose what you want, right? I'm a big fan of those mouse gestures, keyboard shortcuts. Probably want to capture those and use those. So that's a
You
little
do want
bit
to be
on.
careful with the copy settings wizard though when you're copying the system settings, right? If you were going from one machine to another, you might mess up your file paths too. So it's always good to, at the end, it asks you to back it up. So make sure you're doing that. The other thing I would say there too, inside of SolidWorks, so there's a little login button in the top right corner
Oh yeah.
where you can have it sync your settings for you. So you don't necessarily have to have that copy settings file with you if you remember what your login is for SolidWorks. So
exactly. A few years ago, they put that functionality in there. Just sync it to your SolidWorks ID, and you can keep on moving. Good points. I like it. Let's see what we got next here. Hybrid modeling. When I was learning SolidWorks, we pretty much focused only on solid modeling practices, right? There was no real discussion of how to use surfaces. I knew that the tools were there, but it was one of those things that I was afraid of. I didn't understand how to use it. I don't know if you were kind of in the same boat, Garrett.
Yeah, I think my first kind of introduction to surfacing, I think I didn't even realize that the tools were there when I was in industry at all. I think when I showed up at the reseller that I was working for, and basically the first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to draw a P-51 Mustang. All right, it's like, I'm going to do this. I know it requires surfaces to do this somewhere. Like, there's not any flat features on this, but like that's really not the right approach, right? Like, what you're going to be talking about here, hybrid modeling, is the correct approach. Like, all of your tools should augment your other tools, right?
Yeah.
Like, having a good grasp on everything that's inside of SolidWorks is what you need to have. So you know, even though you never do mold tool stuff, you might need a mold tool at some point.
That's a good point. Exactly. Yeah, explore some of those tools that are kind of outside your normal wheelhouse, because chances are you're going to find something that, even though it's kind of used for something specific that's not what you do, you're probably going to find some value in it. So like Garrett said, use this stuff to complement each other. I kind of thought in the beginning, like, if you're going to do surface modeling, you only do surface modeling. If you're going to do solid modeling, you only do that. Once I discovered from the smart guys around me that there's actually a way to combine this stuff together, that was a game changer. This stuff can really get you out of a jam pretty quickly, not only for creating geometry like what we're about to do here, but also if I need to go and repair something. We talk a lot about this in the surface modeling training. How can I fix something that really doesn't have the surface continuity that I need, and I want to patch it up and do something a little different, right? The use cases go pretty far beyond what I'm going to do here. So I got this little wireless router here, right? What we want to do is maybe customize this a little bit to make it a bit more visually appealing. We're going to have some more contoured surfaces, maybe a company logo, something like that. How can I take advantage of this combination of different types of features? So let's go ahead and pop open the top of the router box here. So I've done some surface modeling on this ahead of time to put in the bodies that we need. We're not going to really get too far in detail with that, but use things to your advantage, like copying surfaces, right? You can use the offset surface function to help you with that. Extrude them. We've got some lofting and stuff going on here too. That body is hidden in this current model that we've got, right? So what's a quick little shortcut to bring it back? Garrett knows the trick.
Shift tab, man.
You got it.
Tab, shift tab.
Yeah, tab and shift tab. Those are a couple of quick things here that if you guys don't use that, start exploring it, right? So I just hover my cursor where that body used to be, hold down shift tab, we can run right into it and bring it back to visibility. Same thing.
You remember what the control shift tab does?
Yeah, let's do that real quick. So I'm just holding the tab key here, move your cursor around, anything you touch is gonna hide. How do I know where those bodies are at that I've hidden? If you hold control shift tab, gotta have some nimble fingers for this.
It's one of those, like, I can't. Yeah. I don't know. I can't do it.
Right. So now that I can see it, what you're going to have to do is actually click that body while it's in this preview mode. You can bring it back and then let your hand off the keys there. I took a key with me off the keyboard. That's funny. Anyway, we got the bodies there that we need. So what we're going to do now is use one of my favorite features for hybrid modeling, and that is the intersect tool. So I'm going to go search for this command, right? You guys saw in Jacob's session, there's some new ways to do that in 2022. Another quick tip that I'll offer you, hit the W key on your keyboard. This is going to pop us right into that command search up top here. So now we can just start typing away. If I remember the first few letters of whatever I'm looking for, type it in. I can hit it from the list here, or if I want to add it to like my surfacing toolbar, I can just drag and drop it from that list. Now I got intersect available there. Or I can have SOLIDWORKS show me where that feature is at. It's right in front of my face, but I just can't see it. My eyesight's getting pretty bad these days. We'll use the little eyeball feature there, and it'll actually
right
take
there,
me to
default
where,
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Brandon, I can't believe you forgot it again. Right?
I mean, the intersect is actually one of those tools that I know that I should be using more, but I always forget about it.
Yep. So now what we're going to do is take whatever information I want to do to like basically slice and dice this model up. You can create internal regions, you can cut away sections, you can even take something that's like completely hollow and just make it solid if you wanted to. Lots of different options for how you want to do this. I'm just going to pick the bodies that I need, drag a window around everything. I've also got a plane that's currently hidden right now just with the heads up toolbar. Maybe we don't need that, but you know, maybe you want to include it here. I'll just keep everything as is. You can hit this little intersect button here and it'll do its thing. Cut away those different regions, let you pick and choose what you want. Now the key with this is basically with something complex where you've got a bunch of regions, what I like to think about is what do you want to keep, right? In this case, it's more efficient for me to pick what I don't want to keep. I'm basically just getting rid of that one little overhang section there. The preview that I see here is everything I want. And you can switch visibility here too, right? Show me what I'm not keeping, show me a combination of both. Pretty easy there. I also really like that invert selection. So like I was saying before, if you pick what you want to keep and there's more that you need to select not to keep, just invert it and let it do its thing. We're also going to consume that surface body in this case. Now, my advice here would be if you think you're going to use that surface for other things to build new features, I wouldn't use that bottom checkbox, right?
Yeah,
but
you could
in
be
my
using
case,
it for a different feature later on, or you might need to reference it for sure.
Exactly. In my case, though, this router top is in its final form, so I'm happy with what it is. I'm going to consume that surface body, which is basically like what I would recommend anyways. When you're done with your surface modeling features, delete those bodies out of your model just to clean up the feature tree. Right? I think that plane might be interfering here a little bit. We'll try that again.
I always like the little selections area there, the little icons that you have. I think there's a lot of people that I taught SOLIDWORKS that had been using it for a long time that didn't recognize what those icons meant, right? The little surface body, solid body, and plane, right? I think the same thing with like edge selection and face selection, right? Understanding what those icons actually mean can be really helpful when you're trying to learn features.
Yeah, exactly. Just give you at least a little bit of a clue. But here we go. We've got something that there's basically no flat spots on the top of that box, just like we want. So you can see just how powerful some of that surfacing technology is, right? Things that you just can't create efficiently with a solid. You're probably going to want to leverage this.
Yeah, I think that's something I probably would have, honestly, if I were to had tried to do that, I probably would have used like replace face or something like that in the past, but this is a much better option. And
that's a good point to bring up too, right? You might be able to do it with replace face. In this case, I think I did try that and can't remember why it didn't work out here,
yeah,
but
there's probably some weird like geometry or something like that that's intersecting, or
yeah.
you know.
Realistically, you're going to try some different things as part of your workflow, right? We all do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about reference management. I did create a poll for this one too. I just want to give you guys a little challenge. Let's see if we can launch that poll here. For those of you that are not aware of this, SOLIDWORKS has a specific order that it's going to go search for the reference files that it needs for your assembly or your drawing. And it does that in a very specific way. So with this poll here, let's see if you guys can get the right answer. What is the last place that SOLIDWORKS will look for a reference document upon opening? Let's see what we got here. Look for some votes to come in.
Brandon, I guess I have a question for you. I mean, you and I did a lot of technical support over the years, like essentially like 10 years each of technical support, along with our other responsibilities, of course. But like, how many times have you had a call from somebody where somebody came in and renamed either parts or like a folder structure?
Too many to count.
Got that intern that comes in.
Yep. Somebody's just messing around in there, moving things, renaming stuff. And we want to try to protect from that. Let's see what we got here. Looking at the results here. We got some votes for the right answer. It looks like the majority. Pretty close to it. It was a tie. The tie between last path used by the system and the last absolute path when the parent document was saved. What is the right answer? It's going to be the last absolute path where the document was saved. So choice number 2.
I think that's funny because like I think that's usually what people think is the first thing that SOLIDWORKS is going to go to, right? The path that's actually referenced in the document, like your assembly, you go to the find references, like what you have here. That's your, your absolute path. Like that's the very last thing that SOLIDWORKS looks at.
Yep, and if it can't find it there, it's going to ask you to browse for it. We've all seen that before, right? So a couple of things to think about, and you guys don't have to memorize that per se. There's plenty of blog articles and help documentation that tells you what that reference search order is. So you can go look online for that. If you ever run into any confusion about it, what's happening with this assembly, I can't figure out why it can't find these parts. You'll find some clues if you understand the reference search order. So
I saw Alex actually had a really good point in the chat here. He was saying that if you want to find the right order, I always reference this weird blog, but he's got a good point there. If you go to the help file and you look for search routine in the help file, you can get the order. So
excellent. Good point. Appreciate the feedback there.
I see that your files are in PDM though, so.
Yeah. Got my stuff moved into PDM where it should be.
So you can
lock that stuff down.
Rename and move things and do all sorts of fun stuff.
One of the things I love about PDM, right? Like you were talking about before, if somebody just goes and renames a file in Windows, big no-no if you're not using PDM, but with PDM, it's okay to do that.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I think that's all I got for right now. So
Sweet.
Next topic on the list here, API and macros. Let me switch things back over to you, Garrett.
I see Deepak is in the house, so I feel very underqualified to do this now all of a sudden.
But you've still got a lot more experience with this than I do.
Yeah, and like I'm not going to get deep into the weeds here on the API or using macros. So I mean, for those of you who don't know, API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's a thing that we connect to help drive SOLIDWORKS and automate tasks, right? And if there's one thing that I really hate, it's doing the same thing over and over again, right? Like I will do anything. I'll spend 2 hours worth of work to not do the 5-minute thing a couple of times, right? Like,
yep.
I just detest doing the same thing over and over again. So
I'm with you.
I think, I didn't know anything about the API or really macros when I started. I've been using SOLIDWORKS for about 20 years now, but realistically, I didn't know anything about it. I would go online and I would search the forums and stuff, and I'd be able to find macros and stuff that I could use. I might manipulate it a little bit, but my use case was pretty small. I hardly ever used it. And then, again, kind of working for a reseller, I started to see how people were using these things, right? How they were able to write applications to use SOLIDWORKS to do the things that they wanted it to do, right?
Yep.
Specific to their job, right? Not using SOLIDWORKS as a generic tool, but as more of a purpose-built tool.
Yep.
Right.
A lot of customization out there in the real world. When I first heard about macros, there was like a little tutorial that I found or something like that. Can't remember what it was, but record your own first macro. That was kind of the first thing that I did, and it was pretty limited, right? I thought in the scope of what I was doing, macros just click buttons for you, right?
Right. Yeah, until you record your second one and you're like, wait a second, this
Yeah.
didn't get like half of the things that I clicked.
Doesn't work the way I want it to.
Yeah, so there's certain things that macro recorder does not capture, but you know, there's just so much power in it realistically, and especially when you start like pulling it into things like PDM, and you start expanding like your knowledge of how you can use programming with SolidWorks. I think one of the things that drove me away, initially from programming is I felt like it wasn't really that approachable. One of the things that I struggled with a couple of things in college, but programming was one of the things where I think I probably almost failed that class if I didn't. So
I'm right there with you. I almost failed that one too. Not a programmer.
Yeah, and I still hate Java programming, but there's so many examples of VBA programming, right? So VBA is the programming language that we typically use for SOLIDWORKS macros. So I'll go ahead and open SOLIDWORKS up here, and let's just grab a part. And this will work. If I was going to do the same thing over and over again, like I said, macros are a great way to do it. You could also use library features, just depending on what the thing is. But if you're looking at getting into doing the API, the first place that you want to start here is you go up to the help, just like you do with all of the SOLIDWORKS features. Go to the help, go to the tutorials, and go down and find. There's two tutorials. There's the SOLIDWORKS API one. This walks you through creating simple VBA macros. And then there's another one here that will help walk you through doing like an add-in. So those can be very useful. I wouldn't recommend starting with an add-in unless you have some programming knowledge beforehand, but it's very, very approachable. The other thing that you can do is if you're a Hawkridge customer, which I think a lot of you guys are, on Solid Professor, we do have a course on the API. So you can go through there and learn how to program macros and add-ins and stuff. And that's even more approachable, short videos and stuff that can really help walk you through how to do it. So
exactly.
I think the one thing that I did want to show a macro on though is there's things that you can't get to inside of the normal user interface that you can through the API, right? I think that was one of the things to me, to me, this is also kind of a little bit of more of like a magic trick than it is anything, but you can come in and, this is one to hide the feature manager. I guess I could do that too. Might as well. All right. So if you really want to mess with your coworkers, you could run that guy. And now all of a sudden my feature manager's gone.
I'm pretty sure I saw a few parts come in on support years ago that may or may not have had this macro run on them.
Yeah. So
somebody was playing a joke on them, I think.
Let's bring it back here. Yeah, whatever. Nope. Let's just reload that model.
That's another one of my favorites too.
It's stuck. It's part of the user interface on that one. So
got it.
If you open it up again, it shouldn't be there. There you go. It's back. So that one, like, it is easy to clean up. I think easy enough. One that would really mess with people though is this other one. I think this is the one. If I really wanted to mess with somebody, I would run.
Uh-oh.
I got no SOLIDWORKS features now.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah. So, I have another macro to undo it, of course, but this is not something that I wrote. Somebody else kind of, I think, came up with this. But the point is, other than this is just kind of a stupid magic trick, is that there's things inside of the user interface that you can get to. There's things inside of SOLIDWORKS that you can get to that you can't inside of the normal user interface, right? Yeah. You can even create things like macro features that are essentially your own feature inside of SOLIDWORKS, which are very powerful. I have a couple of customers that use those, and but
a lot can be done. And I see some good comments in the chat about it too, right? Lots of really powerful things. Use some of those examples that you can import if you downloaded them from the forums or something like that. Tons of resources out there. But yeah, at least get your feet wet to start digging into it.
For sure. All right, it looks like we're gonna throw it back over to you, Brandon.
Here we go. All right. Now on this one, might be review for you guys. Hopefully there's a couple of you that haven't seen what we're about to talk about here. If you're not super familiar with ways to troubleshoot your sketch, I'm just going to go through a basic example of some of the things that we're typically looking for. And one of the biggest things that I've run into over the years, and I really didn't understand in the beginning, what the heck is going on with this sketch? Why can't I use it for a feature? Why is it overdefined? There's plenty of ways that you can actually troubleshoot that, and the software can give you suggestions on what do you need to clean up in your sketch to actually make it work. So we'll look at a real quick example here.
I think this is one of my favorite things to show from the Essentials class, probably.
Yep, exactly. Right. So I'm going to use my recent documents there, hit the R key on my keyboard. If you guys didn't know, this is especially handy for assemblies too. If you go to recent documents, hit that little chevron down at the bottom. We'll bring it back up here. This will allow you to access the different open modes and things like that for your assemblies. So quick little tip if you want to use large design really review helpful. Or something.
Open up a specific configuration too, right? Like if you're use configurations heavily.
Yeah, good point. So I've got a sketch here. At first glance, everything looks okay. I've got a couple of closed contour sections here, and we're just going to go ahead and try to use this for an extrude. No preview. What the heck, right? This thing looks like it should work. We've all run into Brandon? This. Messed up a little something, I'm sure, right? But how can I really figure this out? The things that are not apparent just by looking at this with the naked eye, that's where we're going to start getting into tools like check sketch for feature. Right, so I can come right back to my sketch here and just verify that things are going to work the way I expect it to. Now, I've got my shaded contours turned on for sketches, and I can already see a problem here. This section that should be a closed contour doesn't look like it is. This other one here, it didn't think it was going to work for whatever reason. Looks like it's a closed contour. I'll use that shortcut again. Let's look for check sketch there in the command search.
Can I tell you what I used to do in a situation like this?
What's that?
Another kind of embarrassing thing. I would do like a right click and do like select loop, right? And then do a fit spline on it, right?
All right.
Which, I mean, could be a good thing because you get nice smooth edges, but if you don't want that, then
might be some places to not use that for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to just run a quick check on this guy. All right, it's going to tell me, hey, you've got some endpoints that are wrongly shared by multiple entities. If you see this, it's usually a good clue that you've got some stuff that's overlapping in your sketch. You might have duplicate entities, maybe something like that. The thing I love about this is it's going to give you that big magnifying glass, so you can go and actually, zoom in on some of these things that are wrong with your sketch. Like this one here, could not see it with the naked eye. There's no way that I would, go through all those sketch entities to try to figure this out. There's a little tiny gap there. I just need to drag these together and get that connected, right? Skip to the next problem, right? Gives us some clues here. We can kind of see that one line down at the bottom here is an issue. If I skip to the next one here, okay, it's focused on that endpoint. So what do I have going on with this thing? You can always come back and run this again if you want to verify that you fixed everything, but I've got a bunch of segments here in my sketch. This one here is not real easy to pick out, right?
Yeah, if you saw the little endpoint there, maybe, but...
Yeah, so now that I kind of know where to focus, oh yeah, there's an endpoint hanging out here. What's the deal? What I would do in a situation like this, I'm going to try a select other just to see if there's anything hiding behind that other line. And it turns out that is the case, right? There's another line there that's overlapping. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that from my sketch. Do a quick zoom to fit here. Run up and do an extrude. We got our preview. Looks like it's going to work just fine.
Nice.
So that'll do it for some sketch tips. Hopefully you guys saw a couple of quick things there that'll help you out. Another topic, as we got our last few minutes here, design automation. Now I'm going to run through this just as a real quick example. If you guys are doing things that are similar but different, you already have a tool called DriveWorks Express. It's included in every version of SolidWorks. If you need more info on what I'm about to show, check out the session later today by Oliver. He's with the DriveWorks team. They've been a long-standing partner of SolidWorks specifically for design automation. So He can give you a lot more info.
If you do a lot of things that are similar but different, DriveWorks is great for that. Yeah, I won't go into like why you shouldn't use design tables and equations, and because I would offend so many people, I'm sure. But
we've all got our opinions on that. The good thing that I think is good to understand about what DriveWorks does, the things that we talk about that create overhead in your models, like external references, those are good. They have a purpose, right? But you kind of don't want to use them everywhere, right? You're going to end up with a model that takes forever to open, takes forever to change anything. DriveWorks is the opposite of that. It gives you a rules-based ability to build up these intelligent models. If you're looking for how to get there, just go to your tools menu under Express products. You'll hit DriveWorks Express. Now I've already got mine activated. If you guys see a little activation window that comes up, we've got some great support articles that can help guide you through that. But once you get Express open, you can actually download sample projects right from the DriveWorks website. So the example I'm going to go through here, let's, I think I've already got this database loaded up. Let's go ahead and run some projects. If you guys do like industrial staircases or ladders or anything that, you know, goes onto like a weldment structure, this is a really good example project. So let's do like a U-shaped stair. The thing that's cool about this is I am administering what I want my rules to be. So if there's certain design parameters that I have to uphold, I can give people limits on what they can enter. Like what's the height for my stairs, right? So maybe I'll go like 202, right? You can
so
pick.
There's kind of some design validation stuff built right into your example.
Right? So if you want your rails on the right or the left or both sides, however you want this to go, you just hit create. And it's going to run through those rules and actually generate the model for you. So you really don't have to worry about, did I put everything in there that I need to? I don't even have time to go get a cup of coffee and this thing's going to be done.
I think one of the limitations that I thought there was on DriveWorks when I first started was that it had to be a part. Because I think I saw this example and I looked at the tree and I was like, oh, this was only for parts. But that's not the case, right, Brandon?
Exactly. You can do assemblies, you can do drawings. There's other levels to DriveWorks too that I'm sure Oliver will talk about that can offer you, you know, usage of design automation outside of SolidWorks, right? There's tons of stuff you can do with it.
But yeah, DriveWorks is definitely a much better option than a lot of things that we see people doing with equations or things that we've done in the past even. Just because like it kind of publishes the documents and they're not interlinked really anymore, right? They're still referencing each other, but there's not active links that cause a lot of the assembly performance issues that we see.
Yep, for sure. Getting close on our time slot here. Part numbering, quick opinion on this. How should we use part numbering?
I mean, I'm all about serialization, like 100% serialization, and then using the part number properties, right? Whether that's part NO, number, you know, however you want to deal with that. It just gives you so much more flexibility.
Absolutely. Right? PDM is going to be a huge help with that because you can design your own serialization system, right?
Yeah, and there's different ways you could do it, right? If you didn't have PDM Pro and you needed to do serialization, right? I don't want anybody to be left out on that. There's ways to do it with like an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, right? Run a macro, get the next number from the Excel spreadsheet, or you know, if you just set up a quick SQL Express database or something like that, right?
Yep.
Like,
for sure. Decide what's the company standard. I don't have to make it super complicated, right? You've got other places you can use that descriptive data, right? Don't try to describe it as part of the part number because that's what metadata is for, right?
Right. And I don't think I can show this in the assembly that I have open. Maybe yours has descriptions in it, Brandon, but a couple of years ago, SOLIDWORKS allowed you to show descriptions inside of the feature tree as well, right? I think that was one of the big pushbacks I got from people often with this stuff is like, you know, I can't use serialization because if I look at the feature tree, how I'm going to know what it is that I'm picking.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But
so
you
what
have some
Garrett's
feature tree
talking about
options.
Here. Yeah, if you go to your tree display from the right-click menu there, show your component descriptions, right? That's a really easy way that you can just tell, you know, if you're not familiar with what those part numbers are, bring in something that is useful to you right in the feature manager tree.
Yeah, or if you don't care about the instance count, that's that little number or the identifier, you know, all that stuff. Like you can turn a lot of that stuff off.
Exactly. Right? Yep. You can even group instances together, which is a pretty handy one. Right? Like all those screws down here.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's something you might want to set up a macro for because it is specific to the document, though, just so you guys are aware, and update your templates if you're going to do something like that, your assembly template.
Excellent. Well, that's what we've got for you guys today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn if you want to chat with either Garrett or myself. We're always happy to help you guys. Hopefully there was a few tips and tricks that you guys picked up. Maybe some of it was review, but hopefully some new stuff there for you too.
I'm gonna have to open up the LinkedIn app here, Brandon, so I can connect with you.
There you go.
And
let me bring that back here. For anybody that wants to scan that, just head over to LinkedIn, scan that code, take a screenshot, whatever you want to do. But
yeah,
go out
happy
and look
to
for
talk
us
to you guys about, you know, whatever, for sure.
All right, thanks for joining us. I do want to take a quick look while we've still got some of you guys here. Looks like there may have been some questions that came in. Let's see here. I'm just looking at the chat for right now. There was a couple that came in.
Well, there's a couple of things that were on the Q&A side there too, right?
Yeah, I see some Q&A. I'll just look through the chat real quick if you want to grab the Q&A stuff.
Yeah, I'll take a look.
Looks like a couple of you guys enjoyed it. I'm glad you did. Thanks for joining us. I see one, is there a way to easily change the instance number of a component in an assembly? And a couple of replies already. Not a way to do that. Let's see from the Q&A. I don't know if I missed anything in the chat there.
Charles was asking about restoring settings for other programs outside of the core SolidWorks. So copy settings wizard wouldn't work for that.
Right. Composer specifically has its own way to store settings.
It's like XML files and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It just stores those in a set of XML files. Basically, you just go and copy that XML. You can look at it in your properties, your system preferences, or whatever Composer calls it. Go copy that stuff.
I'm trying to remember for Visualize. I don't think that there is a way to copy your settings that I remember off of the top of my head, at least.
Not that I remember. Might be a good one to shoot into support if you've still got some questions on that. I don't know off the top of my head, but really good question, Charles. Composer I do know, but Visualize, not sure. I see one about utilizing surface finishes. That would be more of like annotative type stuff usually, right?
Yeah, I mean, also custom property, right? Like if you're interested in like looking at bill of materials or, you know, whatever it happens to be, and finishes, I think one of the default properties.
Yeah.
Right?
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, in my PDM setup, so if you guys are not using PDM, there are ways to handle this with your custom properties for sure. I'll go ahead and just show the properties for like an assembly as an example. You can have it set up in such a way where you're picking from a list of finishes if you wanted, right? So you could just pick something right from there from your data card if you wanted. But those are really just custom properties is the way to think about it. So good stuff. All right. Let's see, did we get everything?
I'm not sure about that question from Jeff Lee there, but
about the model requirements. Yeah, I'm not really sure what that question means either.
If you want to clarify in the Ask the Expert session, Jeff, like you could absolutely do that, and I'd be happy to answer the question during that session at noon. So
excellent.
Cool.
Well, that's what we've got for today. If you guys want to get connected with us for any other questions, we'd love to help you out.
Or you could just ask Deepak too. He's in there.
Yeah. Thanks for the help on the chat, Deepak. It's really good to have you here.
Yeah. All right, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot, Garrett.
Yeah.
It's fun chatting with you as always.
Always, Brandon.
All right.
Talk to you guys later.
Take care, guys. Enjoy the rest of the show.